My name is Michael O'Rourke. I am the director of the MSU Center for Interdisciplinarity, and welcome to the University Interdisciplinary Colloquium for the 21st of January, 2022. We're very pleased to have Dr. Ellie Louson with us today. And as always, though, we'd like to begin the University Interdisciplinary Colloquium with the Michigan State University Land Acknowledgement. Michigan State University occupies the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, Three Fires Confederacy of Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi peoples. In particular, the university resides on land ceded in the 1819 Treaty of Saginaw. We recognize Michigan's 12 federally recognized Native nations, historic Indigenous communities in Michigan, Indigenous individuals and communities who live here now, and those who were forcibly removed from their homelands. In offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm Indigenous sovereignty, history, and experiences. I'll post a couple of links to the chat after I'm done with my introduction, if you're interested in learning more about the Michigan State University Land Acknowledgement. For those of you who are first-time attendees, the University Interdisciplinary Colloquium is a forum that is organized by the Center for Interdisciplinarity and sponsored by the College of Arts and Letters that highlights the innovative and important interdisciplinary work involving typically the arts and the humanities at Michigan State University. Interdisciplinarity, as I'm sure you all know, is a point of emphasis at major research universities, but often it's sort of code for, well-funded complex science. And what gets lost in the conversation sometimes is the fact that some of the best and most influential interdisciplinary work reflects an appreciation for aesthetic and humanistic dimensions of human experience, broadly construed. So what we in the Center for Interdisciplinarity want to do is make sure that the arts and the humanities are included in the conversations about cross-disciplinary work, so interdisciplinarity and transdisciplinarity at MSU. Right, and we really kind of built this series to provide a forum for people to come and talk about interdisciplinarity from a wide variety of different angles. So we meet every other week. This is the first meeting of the spring. And we'll meet 5 more times this semester, every other week, and on Zoom. Before I introduce our speaker today, I want to just talk briefly about the Q&A plan. So we encourage you to ask questions. And I think that Dr. Louson's presentation will actually be somewhat interactive, although it's a webinar, so you never know what's going to happen there. But while she's delivering her presentation, if you have a question or a comment, please deposit it in the Zoom chat or in the use the webinar Q&A function. And so, as they come to you, write them down. And then when Dr. Louson is finished with her remarks, I'll read the questions and comments out for a response in the order that they were asked. The next UIC will be in 2 Fridays. So Friday, February 4th, from 12 to 1 on Zoom. Our speaker will be Dr. Yuan Fong Dai, assistant professor in the Department of Writing, Rhetoric, and American Cultures, who will give a talk entitled Chinese Feminist Philosophy, Theorizing Chinese Feminism in Transcultural Contexts. So that's in 2 weeks on the 4th of February. Today, though, we have with us Dr. Ellie Louson. Dr. Louson is originally from Montreal and has a background in biochemistry, philosophy, the history and philosophy of biology, and science and technology studies. Her disciplinary research is on wildlife films and the representation of animal behavior. She's also interested in science communication, science in the media, and documentary studies. This research and her teaching in Lyman Briggs College fit within a broader conversation about the historical and cultural treatment of nature, environment, and the wilderness. Her primary appointment at MSU is as a learning designer at MSU's Center for Teaching and Learning Innovation, formerly the Hub for Innovation in Learning and Technology. She leads the Spartan Studios project to improve interdisciplinary experiential learning at MSU, and she is a faculty mentor for the Hub Graduate Fellowship, which introduces grad students to collaborative academic work that connects different parts of campus. She plays in Two Body Problem, a local rock band, and enjoys exploring the outdoors. And I like this line, so I have to read it. This year, she's working on filling her cup before pouring from it. Today, Dr. Louson is with us to deliver a talk entitled Spartan Studios, Lessons from Prototype Interdisciplinary Experiential Courses. Dr. Louson.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction, Michael. I'm so pleased to be here. I really appreciate the invitation. And before I get started, I'm going to preface my talk by saying we have an infant and a toddler at home. The toddler is home because of COVID at the daycare. And so there's a chance that you might hear some infant or toddler noises today. And I hope that that can just be a possibility in the background. We can cross our fingers, but that's reality of academic life under COVID. I'm going to share my screen. And I have lots of slides today, but I expect that I will get through them pretty quickly because there's not much on each slide. And then I hope that we can have lots of time for some good, robust discussion at the end. So like Michael said, this talk is called Spartan Studios, Lessons from Prototype Interdisciplinary Experiential Courses. And welcome. We're going to start with a short check-in activity. So I invite you in the Zoom chat to think about 3 words about how you're doing right now in your mind, body, or in the space around you, but don't hit return until I prompt you to. And this is just a little mindful start to our time together. And after you've thought about those 3 words and typed them into the chat, everyone can hit return now. And so you can see this waterfall of responses showing up in the chat to give us a sense of how, as a group, we're doing here together virtually. I'm seeing a mix of some words like frazzled and tired and hungry and sore and distracted, but also peaceful and excited and happy and curious. And this is an activity that I like to start my online courses with to kind of center us and help me understand how my audience is doing. So this is my plan for the talk today. I'm going to start out by describing the Spartan Studios project and the different components of that work. I'm going to be sharing some of the outcomes that we have so far in this pilot project of prototype courses. I'm going to raise up some of the challenges that we faced and that the faculty members who participated in the project described facing. And then we're going to end with a Q&A that I hope gives us a chance to talk about opportunities for interdisciplinarity at Michigan State. So first of all, what is Spartan Studios? Spartan Studios, as originally conceived as a project in the Hub, was thought of as a reason that students would come to East Lansing and to MSU for their undergraduate studies. So Spartan Studios courses are interdisciplinary, experiential, project-based undergraduate courses. And by interdisciplinary, we mean that they are co-taught by instructors from different disciplines, and students can enroll from different majors. And they're designed to tackle wicked problems in an unsiloed way. So there's a big focus on how, for wicked problems, things like food waste or endangered species, problems that can't be solved by throwing one set of disciplinary methods and tools and apparatus at that problem, but wicked problems really require solutions that are more holistic and more well-rounded and include the contribution of other disciplines. And so these courses are designed to be co-taught by instructors who come from different disciplines on the campus. They're experiential courses, so we hope that students aren't only learning and learning about how these problems are solved, but they're actually involved in the solving of those problems themselves. Students also reflect on their educational experience. That's a strong component of these courses. And we hope to directly involve students in the process of their own learning. And that leads into that red square, project-based. So student learning occurs through projects, and usually these are teams of students working on elements of those projects. The projects are student-driven. They can connect to external partners, and many of our courses did involve community engaged learning or working with a local external partner, but they didn't all have those kind of external partnerships. And then the projects aim to have real world applications and are of interest to the students. Now, pedagogical framework that we developed in this project, and a lot of the credit for this goes to Bill Heinrich, who was the former head of assessment in the hub, is what we call the GORP model. And GORP stands for gravity, ownership, relationship, and place. It's also the acronym for good old raisins and peanuts, the kind of trail mix. And that's because Bill's disciplinary background is in outdoor education. So gravity refers to it's a metaphor for the driving idea behind the course. So it's a theme or project that's bigger than the class itself, and it's meant to be the driver of student engagement rather than the student's grade in the course. So for example, in the food waste challenge course, food waste as the wicked problem and trying to solve that problem is an idea with gravity, and it attracts students who are interested in trying to solve that problem, as opposed to necessarily worrying about whether they get a B+ or an A- in the class. Ownership refers to students' autonomy and feeling of real ownership over their own work and being able to drive their participation on their team. R is for relationship, but also role. So your role in the class, and trying to flatten the student-instructor relationship and giving faculty members more of the role of being a coach, coaching teams of students, as opposed to the kind of sage on the stage model that we're gradually moving away from. And P for place, sometimes also space, but projects and themes that connect to real places, and some of those are local here in East Lansing, and some of them can be places that the class visits or visits virtually in the time of COVID. This is just a little more information about GORP, but those 4 letters come together around to inform the design, teaching, coaching, reflection, and research for these courses. And I want to pause here to make sure that I'm giving credit to the whole team in the former hub who worked on Spartan Studios. I'm the only MSU employee left because Bill Heinrich left MSU for an opportunity at Orbis, an ed tech company in Hamilton, Ontario, and then Dr. Dawn Opal, who led the project a few years ago, and she's still a member of the RAC faculty at MSU, but she now works for the Food Bank Council of Michigan, which was a very exciting opportunity for her. So I'm the only one who's left, and I'm the one who gets to talk to you about this project. And then we also enjoyed the participation of 2 research assistants, Caroline Blommel and Elena Green. And last year we had one of our hub graduate fellows, Nick Young, also was a member of Spartan Studios. So what did interdisciplinarity look like in terms of our practices on this project? So we would work with instructors, helping them to build a team, an interdisciplinary teaching team to run these courses. And we tried to pair them and match make a little in terms of making sure that there was a range of disciplines involved. And the courses, the maximum number of instructors they had were 5, which was quite a lot, and that was wonderful. And then one course had only 1 instructor, but we tried to supplement that with a range of guest lectures. We called it a guest lecture plus system, so that the beginning of the course involved visiting experts from other disciplines to supplement the main faculty member. And then this kind of work could include things like course planning. So we would work on syllabi with them to try to encourage them not to think about the contribution that each discipline was making on its own in an additive way, but really trying to suffuse the entire course with interdisciplinary approaches. And an anecdote that I really like is that in the food waste challenge course, one of the early meetings that we had about the syllabus of the course, they had designed the syllabus so that there were columns where there was the science content for that day, and then the languages, arts and letters content for that day. And so we were trying to encourage them to think of it less as these two separate columns, but more in terms of a more integrated and braided experience. So here's a timeline of the courses that we ran. I'm just moving my chat window so that I can see this a little better. So beginning in 2018, instructors in the Snares to Wares course and Dance Engine consulted with members of the hub. The Snares to Wares course ran physically inside of the hub space in Wells Hall. And Dance Engine was more of a consultation around the course design and assessment. And then in 2019, we had two new courses, the Food Waste Challenge and Wildlife Sanctuary, and another version of the Snares to Wares course ran in the spring of 2019. There's a gap in 2020, and we all know what happened with COVID and pivoting to online. So we didn't run any courses in 2020. And in 2021, the first songwriting course ran as an online course last spring. And then the PIG project ran and wrapped up at in the fall semester of 2021. And then we're really pleased that there are two courses running this semester, a second songwriting course that's will be hybrid this time, we hope, and a course around placemaking, which is a new studios course. And these lines indicate some of the movement of faculty members from that original Snares to Wares course, which was about arts-based solutions and local artisanship as a solution to wildlife conservation challenges and poaching. And so one of the faculty members from that course moved over to found the songwriting course and recruited an additional instructor to work with him. And then one of the faculty members from the first Snares to Wares course, another one of them, found a partner to teach in the Food Waste Challenge. And these dotted lines here are just to indicate that the instructors, some of the instructors involved in these courses were part of the Hub Faculty Fellowship. And so they had some support from us in that way as well. And so on either sides of this COVID gap here, these are kind of the way that we think about the two phases of the project. We had more intensive coaching and facilitation for most of the classes that took place before 2020. And then afterwards, we moved into a less intensive consulting, a less intensive facilitation. And we think of it more as a consulting phase. So we act more like consultants who are available to support the instructors, but we're not facilitating on the ground with them in the same way that we were in 2019, facilitating, holding the classes inside of the hub space, solving logistical problems for them, and meeting them weekly around planning and implementation of the courses. And so one of the ways that we made the shift between the original more intensive and then the later more consultative model of work on this project was our play kit. And maybe Michael can share a link to the play kit in the chat. The play kit exists as a playlist of articles in the iTeach MSU Commons. And so here's a screenshot of what that looks like. And different elements of the play kit include the different topics that we found were important to faculty members who we were working with, like how to think about co-teaching, planning the course, our pedagogical model, GORP, how to think about external partnerships, how to be a coach for students, and how to think about assessment. And then working with the Provost Communications team, we developed a PDF, a navigable PDF version of the play kit. And here are some screenshots from that. And that is now also available in that same playlist at that first link on iTeach MSU. So now I'm going to shift to be talking about some of the outcomes that we found in the pilot project so far. And we're 2 years into the official pilot, which was planned to be a 3-year pilot starting in 2019 after that first initial year of courses. So we're now in the middle of the 3rd year of the pilot, and we have data on the first 2 years. So the first set of outcomes that I'd like to describe are the experiences. And we know about these experiences because we witnessed them, because we were involved in the kind of day-to-day facilitation as these courses were running. And these are also things that students and faculty members told us that they experienced. So we saw applied problem solving, focusing on real-world issues, students being able to act as a disciplinary lead. So if you're on a team of students and you're the only biology student, if there are things that need a biologist in terms of solving problems on your team, you get to step up and be that biologist. So kind of taking ownership of that disciplinary expertise on a collaborative team, coming up with collaborative solutions, and also identity growth. And so those were the things that students told us that they experienced. And then faculty members were experiencing invigorated teaching, cross-disciplinary integration in their teaching, learning new assessment approaches, taking on the role of coach and facilitator alongside being the expert for their own content area, and community engagement. And so here are some pictures from 2 of the courses in 2019, wildlife sanctuary and food waste courses. So in the top left, we have students and the instructor at the Baker Woodlot, Rashana Rajendra Neotropical Migrant Bird Sanctuary on campus. And then underneath that is a picture of the hub space where students and members of the MSU community and the donor family of the bird sanctuary are meeting to learn about the student projects. And then the next column of photos, these are students in the Food Waste Challenge course. On the bottom, they're in the hub space, filling bags for a banana muffin mix that they're going to be giving out at the MSU library at an event aimed at children and families around reducing food waste. And then the top picture is the presentation that the class made to local government and industry members around local food waste issues. Another set of outcomes are the stories that we hear from participants in the project with us. I won't read all these quotes, but I heard from a more established faculty member, a new instructor to MSU, and a student. These stories are all connected to the PIG project course that ran in fall of 21, and this took place at the Student Organic Farm and was meant to be a course oriented around boundary crossing for different approaches to agriculture. And I hope to find out a lot more about the PIG project, but as it's a very recent course, it isn't part of the data that I'm about to be describing. But from what I've heard from the participants, it was a very positive experience. And in the PIG project, it's very hands-on for the students. They raise litters of piglets and are in charge of the looking after the pregnant sows and then the litters of piglets. And it's a really transformative experience for everyone involved, it sounds like. Another thread of outcomes for us is our research output. So we have articles in about the pilot project in innovative higher ed, and about the courses in experiential learning and teaching in higher education. And then we have 2 more articles under review. And I'm really pleased that each of our student research assistants is a first author on one of those articles. One of them is around identity formation in group work in these interdisciplinary experiential settings. And one of them is examining these courses through an experiential feminist lens. Then we also were able to support course instructors' research aims if they want to conduct research about the courses they taught. And so that second paper there, Experiential Learning and Teaching in Higher Education, the Reimagining Scripts for Human and Environmental Justice in Experiential Learning. The second 2 authors there, Ben Lauren and Sandra Logan, were faculty members in the original Snares to Wares course. They were 2 of the 4 faculty members. And then we also have an ongoing collaboration with James Madison University in Virginia's X Labs project, where they also run, they call them transdisciplinary experiential courses. And so we've done some co-authoring with them. Sorry, my slides are taking a little time to move forward. And then our Hub graduate fellow, Nick Young, these are some of the outputs that he produced during his about 6 months with us on the Spartan Studios project. So the first one on the left is a poster that he developed for a disciplinary-based education research conference. And he was looking at the development of the play kit and some of the faculty responses to our play kit resource and the kind of iterations that we did in getting their feedback. And then the second one is an infographic that was more to help the project think about itself and how we can work on recruiting faculty members to the project. So he asked students in the songwriting course what they enjoyed about the course and what they wanted to get out of courses like this. We also have some initial outcomes in terms of student data, and this data came from MSU's institutional research arm. And so we were interested in how accessible the courses were in terms of demographics, because part of the motivation for these courses were to bring high impact practices to experiences of taking 4-credit undergraduate courses that didn't involve an extra outlay of expenses or time. So the kind of potentially transformative experiences that a student might have on a study abroad or taking on an internship or kind of that level of experience, but hoping that it would be more accessible to students if it's a course that they're able to take for credit as part of their undergrad at MSU. And we were also interested in any student success metrics that we could find out about these courses. So we learned that the courses were mixed in terms of the diversity of the student cohorts and their accessibility. But we did see improvement over time for some measures. And one of the ones that I have in a graphic here, these little donut diagrams, is that this is kind of for socioeconomic measures, whether students are receiving Pell Grants in their first year, whether they're first generation students. So that darker green segment of the donut is students who are not receiving Pell Grants and are not first generation students. And that proportion of these donuts over time is decreasing, which was great to see. And it also meant that that's connected to these courses we plugged in with the network of advisors at MSU to advertise more broadly because initially we knew that under recruitment pressures, instructors were reaching out to students who they already knew, which meant that those students could have already had some access advantages compared to the average MSU student. We also learned that students taking a Spartan Studios course had a slightly shorter time to degree and a slightly higher GPA. We don't think that that's necessarily causal, though, because a higher proportion than baseline of the students taking these courses were honors students. And then lastly, and I have another slide about this coming up right after, this was really interesting to us. Spartan Studio students who changed their major were more likely to have changed colleges, and their GPA was less of a driver for their major switching. Now, you might not know, but changing majors is a pretty common experience for undergrad students at Michigan State, and we have some graphics here. If my slide will change. So this smaller diagram here is MSU's overall flow of students between majors and colleges. So the straight lines are students who are changing. Straight lines are students who are staying within the same college, and the other lines are the kind of flowing, curving lines are students who are moving into different colleges. This bigger diagram here is just looking, we had 84 students, 82 students overall in the pilot in the first 2 years of the pilot. And of those, slightly more than half changed their major, but a majority of the ones who changed their major also changed college. And students were more likely to move into a college that was hosting or the focus of one of the Spartan Studios courses that they took. So in these donut diagrams here, agriculture and natural resources was one of the winners in terms of getting more students, and so was arts and letters, which was a really interesting pattern for us to see. Now, of course, this is a small subset of classes, and the classes don't have huge enrollments, so it's difficult to say if this is representative of what other students' experiences in Spartan Studios would be. But we are really interested in this kind of initial data. So I'm going to move into some of the challenges that the project faced, and there were definitely challenges. So the main challenge is for our instructors. This is a new way of teaching, and it's not easy. There are barriers to learning how to do it and how to do it well. So co-teaching is a different mode of teaching from having your own class and being, the instructor of record and solely responsible. And there are relationships with your co-teachers that you need to work out, and also, the challenges are logistical for the faculty members, so there's a lot more planning involved. And if you're working with external partnerships, learning how to do that well, fortunately, MSU has a wonderful office for the Center for Community Engaged Learning, which we were able to draw on their expertise as well. These kind of courses require a new kind of relationship with between teachers and students on the teaching team, so teachers with each other. And there's a lot of trust that's involved to move away from the kind of more authoritative top-down version of relationships in the classroom. And it's risky because you don't necessarily know the outcome when you give students ownership and autonomy over delivering a semester-long project and iterating on that project. And it can be very tempting to want to step in and solve problems for students. And it's hard not to, but it's really rewarding if you can. We also face some challenges of barriers beyond individual courses. I call these campus barriers, but they're not, that's maybe not the very best label that I could have used. But coordination between departments is a little bit difficult if the course is running under with different course codes, the class needing to meet at the same time and having students who are taking the course. One student might be taking it in the College of Agriculture, and another student might be taking it from Arts and Letters. So there's just more coordination that's needed for something like this. Recruitment of students for these courses was a challenge, and also recruitment of faculty members. And these last few bullets are around the faculty experience. So whether teaching this course can be part of or in addition to someone's regular teaching load, and those who took it on in addition or as overload teaching, it really did overload them because it was a lot of work. The question, does innovative teaching count for research faculty, was something that we thought of a great deal, because there aren't tons of courses like this yet. And it is an area where cutting edge is a kind of cliche thing to say, but there really aren't a lot of courses that are combining these different pedagogical approaches in this particular combination. And so it really is innovative teaching. But it could be that in your own unit, teaching doesn't count for you as much as it might. And then we know that in general, faculty members, the instructors who we worked with, people are overloaded. And this was true even before COVID. But it was difficult for us to recruit participants to say, we want to teach you this wonderful new way of teaching and arranging your classes. It's really hard work, but once you learn how to do it, it's very rewarding. And we found that value proposition was not as attractive as we initially expected. And maybe we shouldn't have had that kind of expectation. And then I'll definitely say that the COVID-19 challenge was a pandemic. And as you saw in the timeline, we didn't offer any courses in 2020, and we instead focused on developing our pedagogical resources during that time. So in terms of the next steps for the project, like I said, we're in the middle of the final year of the pilot. And so that means that we need to decide as a university what's going to happen to the opportunity to offer courses like this. We're hoping that it will live on in some form. It's also difficult to say precisely what will happen because, as some of you know, the hub has we have transitioned away from being the hub for innovation and learning and technology, and many of us will continue to be working as learning designers in the new Center for Teaching and Learning Innovation, which will be eventually physically and bureaucratically housed in the library. And so what happens to this project is a little up in the air, but we're very interested in finding partners to work with and finding faculty members who are interested in developing courses with us around interdisciplinary experiential teaching. And we know that this isn't the only place on campus where really interesting and innovative teaching is taking place. And I know that in my home college where I teach in Lyman Briggs, there's a long tradition of interdisciplinary teaching, especially in our senior seminar courses. But we want to help faculty members who want to participate with us across the campus to have a chance to try out this new kind of flavor of teaching. And that's all that I wanted to get through in my talk. I really welcome your questions, and please feel free to contact me with any follow-up. And there's my email there, Louson, EL@MSU.
Thank you very much, Dr. Louson. Please, everyone, if you would, deposit your questions in the chat, or you can use the Q&A function if you want. And then we'll kind of go in order of the questions as they arrive. I'm going to kick things off, though. And I've got a couple questions. I don't know how many of these I'll actually ask, but I'll start with one. And that has to do with the challenges. So you had challenges for associated with the new way of teaching and challenges associated with campus barriers. I'm wondering if there were any challenges communicated to you for the students, like or was it like, were there any complexities or difficulties that the students confronted that you would describe as challenges for realizing these courses successfully?
That's a great question. And I should have included challenges that students faced, because we had students who were very game, and they participated fully in these courses. These were real courses for them. And it was a new way of taking a course, and they needed to learn how to be learners in those courses, also how to take ownership of the work that they were doing. And there was also a component of students needing to trust that the things we were telling them about these courses were true, that you will have autonomy on your team to be solving this problem. We will work with you more as a coach than as a authority figure in the classroom. And in our first paper, the Springer link that Michael shared, we call that our coaching paper, Who Coaches the Coaches. But there's an episode in one of the courses that we describe in the paper where the faculty members had what they felt were very good reasons at one moment of the course to kind of reassert their authority around what would be happening in the course. And then in the student reflections, students shared with us what that moment of reassertion of authority meant for their experience in the course, and how it influenced their relationship with the faculty members and the remainder of the course. So we were lucky to get, these kind of really frank reflections from the students around, we thought that it would be XYZ, and then partway through the course, we heard that there would be also ABC, and that's not what we expected, and that was difficult, but we bounced back from it, and we overall had a positive experience.
The second paper, I put the link that you shared with me in there, but it wasn't loading, so I went back and I got a different link to the paper. But
okay, great.
So just FYI. Great. We have some questions in the Q&A, and Bethany Larson has a few questions that are related to the technical details of the course. Maybe I'll bundle them, and then we'll go to Kristen Erla's.
Sure. So starting with Bethany's questions.
Right. Were these courses already in the MSU course catalog?
Some of them, mostly yes. So something like a senior topics course, as a course code, had the kind of flexibility to handle a new topic or a new theme. Faculty members are able to have some autonomy around the theme that they're teaching in a course like that. I think that my slides skipped through this slide, and let me try to grab it quickly. I'm gonna share my screen just for one more second. So this is a table of the different courses and course codes that they ran under, and this is for the first 6 courses of the pilot. So you can see that first course, Snares to Wares, it had 4 instructors, and it was offered as a fisheries and wildlife course, a packaging course, languages, and then it was also an IAH course. And then the second Snares to Wares course was also fisheries and wildlife and packaging, and also fulfilled the IAH requirement. The Food Waste Challenge course ran as both an IAH and an ISB Gen Ed required course. And I believe it is the first course in the history of MSU to ever do that. So it fulfilled both. It was the humanities requirement for the science students in the course, and it was the science requirement for the humanities students.
That's cool.
But courses that did that needed a little more lead time to get approved to be to meet those requirements, because that can take up to a year. And then I'm just going to focus on the other questions from Bethany. And thank you for these logistical questions are really important to talk about.
Let me read them out just sake of the recording, if you don't mind. Were these courses already designated as team taught? If not, can you speak to the steps you needed to take to get them team taught?
I don't believe that they were designated as team taught, and the model that we used, I'm going to stop sharing. The model that we used was a kind of bring your own students model. So if Michael and I were teaching this course, I would be bringing some Lyman Briggs students, and Michael might be bringing some philosophy students. And even though we would treat the students, we would try to treat them all as co-learners in this space, and they would all be on different project teams. But I would be responsible for grading my Lyman Briggs students, and Michael would be responsible for grading his own students.
And then the last question that Bethany asked was, were there any prerequisites for the courses?
That's also a great question, and I don't believe that there were, but it does get complicated if you have, for example, courses where it's a 400 level course for one discipline and it's a 200 level course for another discipline, or sometimes the faculty member working with us, part of their regular teaching load is something like the first year writing course. So that's what's happening in the placemaking class right now, where it's a combination of an upper year course from one discipline and the first year writing course in another discipline. And so how do you cater those experiences to those learners' needs while at the same time facilitating appropriate kinds of participation on the student teams? And also for things like some disciplines that have a more rigid kind of ladder of prerequisites that can be knowledge or skill-based, we want these courses to be exposing students from outside of those disciplines to new approaches, new methods, but we also want it to be safe and appropriate learning experiences for them. So there's a lot to take into consideration.
Thank you, very good. We have a question from Kristen Erla, and I'll read this out. You brought this up on the challenges slide, but I'd be curious to hear if you have any thoughts about how to structurally handle faculty wanting to teach courses like this, but then feeling the barriers of department teaching expectations, loads, etc. I can see my department being like, yeah, that sounds great, but we can't give you up for that. Institutional barriers are always such a bummer for this kind of work.
And you saw me just grab my phone and take a picture of that question before it disappears, because this is exactly the kind of barrier that these days I'm butting my heads up against. We were trying to recruit more faculty members and grow this project, but we were under constraints around, in part, people feeling overloaded and not being able to participate, and people hearing messages like this from their own departments. And then our financial model, which was until now has been stipend based. So if you participated with us, we were able to give you a stipend for participating. We didn't pay your salary for teaching the course. So if it was part of your regular teaching, the stipend was on top of that. And if it was an overload course, then you were very generously taking on this work and then getting a stipend from us. But the value proposition for administrators is also something that we really are trying to work on in this project. And we know that in the next phase of the project, it's going to be something that it's a nut that we have to crack in order to make this available to more faculty members. But it is really heartening in our work, and then also in your question, we are finding that there are faculty members who are interested in trying something new and who want to invigorate their teaching. There are pockets of really amazing stuff already happening all over MSU. And so how do we reduce those barriers or perceived barriers? And how do we make this something that is easy for administrators to say yes to? These are big, important questions, and ones that we're still working on as we reimagine what happens to this pilot throughout all of the transitions that we're going through.
Excellent. Please, folks, continue to toss questions into the Q&A if you want, or into the chat. While we're waiting for any additional questions, I'll follow up with another question of mine. You mentioned that one of the outcomes of the the experience for the teachers was cross-disciplinary integration, right? So integration across their particular perspectives. I'm curious if you could say more about what that looked like. Maybe I know I'm asking you to come up with specific examples, which might be, but I am kind of curious. What did cross-disciplinary integration look like for the faculty members who taught in some of these courses?
So I'm going to use the example of the food waste course, where we had one member from Ag and Natural Resources who had quite strong, a real kind of leader in anaerobic digestion, which is a big container that you put the right bacteria into, and you turn food waste into the right kind of biogases that you can use for fuel. And so that, is wonderful research and technical and practical knowledge, and we can try to apply those things on campus. But anaerobic digesters as a solution to food waste come up against big, their own barriers around the public understanding of food waste as a challenge, and the kind of science communication involved with communicating with the public around that challenge and how this might be a solution. So really it turns into a communications issue. And so teaching this course with a member from Arts and Letters helps that faculty member not only get that across to students who are interested in learning about anaerobic digestion, but also in terms of their own research outputs and their own projects on campus. And so there's kind of integration that way. These are, we hope that these are real problems that faculty members take up to teach, and working with someone in another discipline means that you get to kind of you're the expert from your discipline, but you also get to learn across the teaching team as well.
Right. Very interesting. Thank you. Let's see, there is another question in Q&A from Bethany. How did you find faculty to teach these courses?
So that's another great question. At first we had, we were working with faculty members who already knew about the hub. And so again, there was this kind of access advantage to people who were interested to try something new with that first Snares to Wares course. And then over time, it was a combination of word of mouth. So people were telling us that they, my colleague taught this course with you, and then I had this idea to do the same thing, or a kind of, like I described in the timeline, a kind of budding off of someone who had done it before, founding a new teaching team. But from the beginning, we didn't want it only to be available to people who already knew about it. And so we were trying to get the word out, and we developed a flyer that also lives on I Teach MSU. But again, we were kind of caught between the rock and hard place of wanting to grow and put this opportunity in front of more faculty members, but also only having a certain number of stipends in my pocket to give out to people, and needing to come up with a decision procedure that was fair and equitable. I was imagining, what if I'm beset with people wanting to teach these courses? I only have 11 stipends. What will I do? And then in the end, it's kind of, if I can find 11 people who actually want to do this, then that's a great year in the pilot. And so we never had more than 2 or 3 courses going at once. So we did want to recruit more widely, and we took some steps in that direction, but we were really constrained in terms of the size of the pilot project.
And another question from Bethany: has your group thought about graduate level Spartan Studios? Keeping in mind Bethany's assistant dean in the graduate school. So
that's a fantastic question, and that's also a question that I talked with Thomas Yajko about while he was the interim head of the hub in the middle of its transition into the library center. So he was very interested also in the possibility of what could this look like for graduate instructors. And it seems like there's our graduate students are fantastic. I know that from being the mentor of the Hub Graduate Fellowship. And so any opportunity to give them the chance to come together as teaching teams or to work with more established faculty members across disciplines and to give them this chance would be fantastic. And I believe in the PIG project, we have a combination of more established faculty members, much less established faculty members, and staff members, some of whom are graduate students. So there's at least one graduate student who was an instructor in one of these courses.
Wonderful. I'm going to end the session today, the colloquium today, with a final question, and then we'll call it a colloquium. But and you refer to it from the start as a pilot, and so I'm curious what that means and what can we do to help. What can we? You like to see pilots become established programs, and I'm curious what the arc of this is from your perspective.
So that's such a fabulous question, and part of why I was so thrilled to be invited to speak at the Center for Interdisciplinarity is that I hope that the C4I might also be a good partner for us to think through what the next phases of this work looks like in terms of that these are interdisciplinary courses. And I know there's a lot of interest in interdisciplinarity. MSU's new strategic plan has lots of great things to say about interdisciplinarity. So we're hoping that this can be one of the ways that we bring these kind of opportunities to more faculty members who are interested and to more students, absolutely. But in terms of the nuts and bolts of the project, we're working up our recommendations for what the first year after the pilot look like. There's still going to be lots of data to go through, thinking about feasible campus homes for this kind of work. Do we want to try to grow next year? Do we want to try to maintain the number of courses that we've had? Do we want to take a break from running new courses and instead try to set up this system of courses? Thinking about the faculty members who have already worked with us, would they like to be on something like a faculty advisory committee? Can they mentor new faculty members who would like to do this kind of thing? And then also reaching out to the deans and chairs and figuring out how this program and type of teaching can better meet their needs so that it isn't such a tough value proposition for them.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your presentation and for your very illuminating responses to the questions. Thanks everybody for joining us today, and we hope to see you in a couple of weeks when Dr. Dye will be with us for the next University Interdisciplinary Colloquium. In the meantime though, I hope everyone has a good couple of weeks. Take care now.